Hey, what's going on, guys? Today we're going to be checking out a very cool Mook here from Hobby Japan. This is their Gunpla Super Technique. This is a weekend guide for getting professional results with your Gunpla in easy steps that anyone can do without an airbrush. And so there's going to be a lot of text in here to go along with this that you guys will see that will explain some of the steps, which is all going to be in Japanese, of course, but we're going to go through this and just kind of take a look at some of the steps. Some of the steps I'm sure will be familiar to a lot of you guys, but if you're a beginner, a lot of the stuff in a book like this can be very helpful to you. But even if you're someone who has a lot of experience and years of experience, there's always a lot of different ways to go about doing different things. So even for those of you who have been doing this for a long time, or like even for myself, I'll sometimes be going through books like this and I'll find new ways to do something, or I'll find new techniques and stuff that I find interesting just from these books, which are generally tailored for beginners, but you can always find really cool stuff in here. So let's go ahead and check it out. So taking a look at this book, flip it over to the back and you can see a few of the models that are going to be featured in here, and also the price tag for this one, which was 1,500 yen, so about like $13 US. Totally worth it for a Mook like this, as I think you guys will see here. But there we have the Master Grade Verka Gundam right here on the front, sporting some nice new details on there. So this is not airbrushed, so basically it's just got details and stuff added, panel lined, and maybe some pigment powder on there, a little bit of weathering, something it looks like probably, and then some top coat, and then you get some really nice looking results just like that. And that's what this book is here to teach you how to do. So I should also mention this is by Teppei Hayashi. Over here, table of contents, the different models here. Now this doesn't really, I believe, show you, no, it doesn't say like what each model is teaching you, like the technique that's gone over in each model, but it just tells you what the base model kit is. And these are all, let's see, all master grades. So master grade, master grade, master grade, RE100. It doesn't mention on the front that it's all 1/100 scale based, but I mean, obviously the same techniques would be applicable to anything really. So here's just an introduction to some basic tools here. It looks like you got your nippers, of course, knife, hair dryer. I'm not interested to see how they're going to be using the hair dryer. Brushes, paint markers, some can spray, just air, just compressed air there it looks like. Some top coat, some panel liner, some just paints. Those would be enamel paints or acrylic paints there from Citadel. Some acrylic paints here from Mr. Hobby. Some other different painting stuff from Mr. Hobby. Weathering supplies. There's the weathering pigments. As I mentioned, glue, of course. So it still looks like, oh, even if you're not fully painting, if you're not airbrushing, it's still kind of a lot of stuff that you need to have, but you don't necessarily need all of this, just kind of depends on the look that you're going for. So starting off with the Master Grade Zaku Cannon. Awesome kit. I love this kit, by the way. So here we can see, let's see, so number one, I should mention, I'm not going to go through every single detail, every single tutorial in here, but I think as you guys will see, there's just a lot of stuff to cover. So I'll just kind of mention some of the things that immediately stand out to me. I would just highly recommend that you guys, if you think that this looks cool, if it looks beneficial to you, I would recommend just picking up the book for yourself, because there's just going to be way more in here than what I can cover in this video. But for example, here for the hands, this is those type of master grade hands where the fingers are molded together, but you can slice them apart to make them individually articulated if you wanted to. That's something that I feel like is probably a pretty common one that a lot of people know about, but just in case you don't. Also, cutting the decals. So this kit only comes with sticker decals, not waterside decals, but one way that you can make those look better is rather than just peeling them off with like a square, they have like a square background, they're just cut out in a square basically. But if it's like a triangle shape like this, just cutting it out with a knife will make a less of a transparent border around the actual design of the sticker, and it'll look nicer. This is really cool down here, mixing up some of the Mr. Weathering color, I believe it's called. What's the name of it? Yeah, that's right, Mr. Weathering color here, this one right there, with the solvent for it, just to thin it out more, and then just kind of painting a thin layer of that over the entire model, and then cleaning that up will basically add a tint or a filter layer over the whole kit. That's something that you may hear talked about in different weathering videos and weathering tutorials and stuff. Filtering, that's basically what they're doing right here, and you can do it right on the plastic. Now a lot of people will warn you that weakens the plastic. Yes, any lacquer based solvent will, but you just need to be a little bit careful with it. Oh, okay, and then using the hair dryer to, I guess, quickly or more quickly make that cure, I guess, basically. So there you go. Got a little bit here about using a sponge for adding some chipping on there. That's another pretty common one I feel like a lot of people probably know about, but then you can also use different markers and things for your panel lining and chipping there as well. And a couple other weathering techniques kind of touched upon over here using those supplies that we saw there at the front, and then the finished product. So yeah, completely unpainted, but a very nice looking model right there when it's all said and done. So we got some nice big reference photos here for this, and you can see they've definitely dirtied it up quite a lot. So I think that's doing a lot of the heavy lifting for this build, is just kind of how dirtied up it is. But I mean, it still looks really nice. All right, we got the Master Grade Gearbera up next, and it looks like for painting just the missiles in the top of the head, he's sprayed white first, which is an important step for anytime you're doing colors, especially when you want a bright color, where this is just a gray piece of plastic. So if you wanted this to be, if you wanted those missiles to be bright red, important step to put white down first, so that makes sure your red is going to be nice bright red, and then red on top of that, and that's how that's going to look on there. This time a white color is used for the filtering on this, and he's brushing it on much more thick, and then kind of just wiping it off. Just because this is an aquatic mobile suit, it makes sense. So you just kind of have to think of like your weathering color that you're using. You shouldn't just use the same, same 1 or 2 colors for everything. Think about the environment, whether it's an aquatic type or a desert type, or if it's one that's just going to be used in space. These are kind of things that you have to think about when choosing the colors of your weathering products. So there's a little bit more kind of here about doing some streaking as well, using a brush to apply that, and then using a cotton swab or a Q-tip or whatever to then just kind of pull the paint in the direction that you want the streaking to go, just for some like rust streaks there coming out of the vents in the front that you can see really nicely on this example. There's some more about that. And again, the nice large reference photos are really nice. So sometimes when you have books like this, you kind of just have a lot of this, where it's a lot of little photos, and it's great for having a lot of information and a lot of stuff packed into a really tight space, but then it's nice to have a good mix of some really large photos too, just so you can see how the finished result is kind of intended to come out with that. Here we got the Master Grade Gym Sniper. So now this one is also, again, changing the environment into space now, so using different colors here, kind of more just kind of gray around there on the torso for some of the filtering that he's applying on this one. And this is kind of interesting. From what I can tell, it looks like he's doing some dry brushing around on there, and then also using the knife blade to then kind of actually physically chip away some of what he's dry brushed on there. So it makes, again, a kind of more three-dimensional look to that, how the chipping is done there, just for some very, very, very light chipping on there, just done with the dry brush and the knife. Painting silver up underneath your clear parts, like underneath the clear visor. That's always a good idea. And then for some of like these mechanical bits, painting some silver on there. Again, something you can do just very quickly and easily, just if you have just a spray can or just a small bottle of just some silver paint. Just add some metallic details to a kit like this in certain areas. Dry brushing around on the weapons. So again, where the weapons, it's basically just all one color. So you're not going to have anything to really break up the details as far as different colors, but you can break up the details and everything, make it look more realistic just by dry brushing over the whole thing. So that definitely helps make that weapon look much nicer as well. And there's our nice big reference photos here for that. Next up we have the Gelgoog, and this one's really cool. Now we're getting into some of like some heavy damage, and this is a really cool kit to do that too, because this is the 2.0 where it has a lot of really nice details on the kit. And this first part here is talking about like kind of how to utilize some of the nice details this has on the inner frame under that part by damaging the armor in a way that you can see more of what's going on underneath the armor, just kind of through that process. So it's talking about just using a pen just on the outer armor just to kind of draw out on the armor where you want to cut away to make your damage. And especially on areas like this on the skirt armor, this is 2 separate armor pieces, and if you want the damage to look like one consistent area of damage, it needs to look right on kind of both parts of the armor that are touching. So having the model kit built and then drawing that on there first is a good way to make sure that then when you put it together again, you don't have pieces that are like misaligned the damage or anything. Everything's all lined up and looks consistent, as you can see there in the photo down there at the bottom, which looks very cool. This one's using, it looks like a soldering iron to do some of the damage as well. It's another good tool to have. You can get a soldering iron for very cheap. Just be careful with it. Obviously, it's very dangerous, very hot tool. But yes, it can certainly be a good tool to have on hand, and you can usually buy them for like less than $10. They should be quite cheap, just as a way for doing physical damage, especially for burn damage from like energy-based weapons like beam rifles, beam sabers, stuff like that. So applying these damage bits here onto the front of the shield and then onto the chest, this big X across the chest, which is pretty cool. Using some other tools like a drill, just kind of scraping the drill, like I guess as you're turning it, and then scrape it across the front just to make some different damage marks using a Dremel type tool. It doesn't have to be like a brand name Dremel, but that Dremel type of tool to make like bullet hole or dent kind of looking damage like that around it as well. So a lot of really nice tips on here for doing physical damage, even having like the shield completely cut off like that. It's pretty cool. So that's what we've got here, and then the finished result of that does look really nice. So I think this is really nice, like large physical damage, just because you can see that the whole kit doesn't look like it's just like been buried in the dirt and dug up again, but you can see how it maybe went into like 1 or 2 battles, got quite a bit of damage, but it's all to areas that would not affect the combat ability of the mobile suit, so the mobile suit would still be operational. This is just kind of mostly kind of aesthetic damage, which I'm sure would weaken some areas of the armor, of course, but it's done in a quite realistic way if you're thinking about it actually being a mobile suit that's actually being used in space warfare. So another thing that's just important to keep in mind. So that's very cool. The Masquerade ARC-782 version 2.0 kit here. I think this is just the inner frame. So just talking about for this step here, just a bit about detailing some parts of just the inner frame that you can see right there with that. Going from what is essentially just a completely gray frame here, and then going to that with all these bits and details and everything all pulled out of that. Any of the Masquerade 2.0 kits obviously going to be good for that. Here we've got the 2.0 Zaku to custom painting some camo on that, just with a hand brush. So you can just brush that on there, and then let's see, once the camo is all painted on there, then you want to apply some other weathering and filtering onto that, just to kind of help to kind of then blend everything together to make everything look all cohesive. So adding some chipping, everything onto here, and then here we go, adding some very thick mud around the bottom of that, using some just weathering products there for adding the mud, using a hairdryer. So I guess just using a hairdryer to help quickly cure the different weathering products and things like that. I've never really thought of that as being too much of an issue, but yeah, especially just because this is like for weekend making models is what it says. So just kind of like a more relaxed sense where you don't want to spend a ton of time on stuff. Obviously these aren't fully painted kits, so yeah. If you're just working on something, this is kind of a simple, fun project, and you don't want to have it just waiting around while you're waiting for different weathering products to cure. Just hit it with a hairdryer, and then it's dry enough, and you can keep on working. So it's very cool. But I do really like how they've it's going from like dried mud to wet mud down here at the feet. So that's pretty cool looking, and the camo on that looks quite nice. So pretty cool looking model. Yeah, you can see when it's all said and done. I mean, you can definitely see like the brush strokes and stuff in the camo, the way that the camo is painted, because that paint seemed to be on there quite thick, but it's kind of leveled out visually quite a bit by, again, just the filtering, the weathering layer over the top of the entire kit. Here we've got the Masquerade Geara Doga. This one's got some cool stuff going on. So we've got some zimmerit they've added to it and around a couple spaces, looks like around on the feet and the front skirts. So this is just using Tamiya epoxy putty. So you get that epoxy putty, spread that out in a thin layer on where you want to apply this, and then using a tool. There's different tools that you can get for that, and there's different ways to do it kind of without one of these specific tools for applying zimmerit, but you can get one of these tools that you can just roll on there, so around the feet or on the front skirt, then just painting that in a kind of similar color to match the color, just kind of putting a thin layer of paint over the top of that. And again, with the environment in mind, he's going for like a snowy environment here. So basically painted this kind of whitewash over the whole thing. And again, you can tell this is definitely inspired by like armor modeling. So you got the zimmerit on there, you got the whitewash on there. This is things, techniques that are done quite commonly, I think, in a lot of armor modeling specifically, but you can of course apply similar techniques, if not the same techniques, essentially, just kind of at a little bit different scale. To something like this. So once you got all your whitewash on there, and then you can kind of then brush some more colors back kind of over the top of that. Then you can also do reductive chipping of the whitewash, whether it be like through a hairspray technique or something. You can do that as well, just to make it look like some more of that whitewash is chipped off or scraped away or whatever the case might be, to kind of reduce that back once you've applied that on there. It's essentially like a thick filter that you're applying over the top of it, but it does look really cool. As I say, really nice finished result here for a whitewashed, zimmerit added Geara Doga there. Really nice, yeah, finished result. I mean, it looks really cool, I've got to say. Quite interesting. All right, here we got the RE100 Gerbera. The first thing we're going to be doing is adding that kind of two-tone blue camo pattern here. I believe that's referred to as a splinter camo, at least on stuff like the XS Gundam, for example, has a similar kind of camo colors there. So just do it with masking tape. Just put your masking tape on there, mix up a nice kind of off blue color that's a little bit different, and just mask and spray it. It's as easy as that. Painting in some more of the details. After painting and working on this kit myself, I can tell you that it definitely took a while to get all the seam lines removed on the fuel tanks, and then all the detail painting that you have to do, especially on the fuel tanks. They take a while to work on in this particular kit, but awesome kit. I loved it. I would love to work on another one at some point in the future, but just panel lining in, painting the details in on some of the other little detail areas, adding waterside decals, adding top coat, and pretty straightforward one there for a nice clean build. It didn't even get rid of the seam lines here on this, but again, just for the nature of this, the focus of this book, that's kind of fine. Again, it's talking about how to get really good looking results with like the minimal amount of effort, not spending, you know, weeks or months on a particular project. Here we have the Master Grade Unicorn 3 Phenex, of course. And for this one, it looks like he's not only painting a white, it looks like it's either white or really bright silver on the back of the clear parts to make them more bright looking, but then also going over the top with a blue like Gundam marker just to kind of bring out the details. So it's making them brighter and making the details more apparent there by doing both of those steps. And then of course there's a bit about touching up the nub marks with a gold marker, especially on the MG. There's going to be a lot of nub marks that you need to touch up with a gold marker. That's easy enough using the waterside decals, a bunch of those, obviously with a kit like this as well. Shining it up, getting rid of all the fingerprint marks, just with a cloth. And again, even though it's something that I feel like a lot of people would not do, applying filtering over your gold to make it look all dirty and weathered like that. Yeah, for a nice, big, bright, shiny gold kit like that, and a lot of times you're not gonna see a kit like this being weathered. So it's really interesting and unique to see a weathered Phenex. But yeah, adding some chipping and filtering and everything on top of this Phenex to get it look all dirty and grungy, but still all that nice, bright, shiny gold and the psycho frame and everything in there. Looks pretty cool. Next up, we've got a very ornamental, decorative, fancy Master Grade Gyan here. So they've gone ahead and sprayed all the armor to paint the armor silver, essentially. So spraying the parts on the runner, a big no-no in my opinion, but I guess they're making it work here. So just, okay, so what they're doing is spraying the parts and then cutting them off and then touching up the nub marks with Gundam marker. You can do that. I would really not recommend it though. I mean, think about how much time, whether you're cutting the parts off the runner first and then using alligator clips and then spraying them, is that really taking much longer than having to do this, spraying the parts and then cutting them off and then having to go back and touch up all the nub marks, and then you have all these little touch-up marks, which, you know, may or may not be all that visible, I don't know, but I would say don't do that. Forget that. Everything else in here, I mean, and stuff, sure, try it out, but I don't know. I wouldn't opt for that. Anyway, then so what they're using for the decorative stuff on this, I should mention, is stuff that you can get from like a nail supply store, it looks like. This is all decorative stuff like for doing nail art. And they're just using these to go around to make this ornamental Master Grade Gyan. So like you've seen, there's different P-Bandai kits that have different versions of the One Year War Zeon mobile suits with this type of decoration on them. But in this case, they're making their own, just using all these different nail supply products, basically gluing them on to the kit in different areas. So, I mean, I can imagine all the work that it took to make this and just to cut all those pieces that they'll fit around everywhere on there. That's a lot, but looks pretty cool, definitely. All right, for this next build, we've got some kit bashing going on here between the Master Grade Gym Sniper 2 and the Gundam Amazing Red Warrior Master Grade kits. So you can see the kit bashing there between the two, trying out different parts on different parts of the kit just to kind of see how everything's gonna look, what parts you're going to like for certain areas or not. So where stuff like doesn't fit naturally, just kind of how to cut the frame and then just reattach parts, how to glue parts in or cut parts of the armor so they fit onto different parts of the frame. So of course, obviously with kit bashing a kit with an inner frame, that's something you have to think about quite a bit. How mixing different parts of the frame and or armor is going to affect how stuff fits, and that's where a lot of the customization takes place, just under the hood sort of, just to make sure that everything fits where it needs to go. And just using some can spray to do their painting on that, painting some different sections in the different colors there, a little bit of masking required, and there you go, you've got a very cool looking kit bash between those two kits. And you can recognize the different parts from the Gym Sniper 2 versus different parts from the Amazing Red Warrior. It's got like the feet, the hip armor, the chest of the Amazing Red Warrior, and basically like the arms and legs and head of the Gym Sniper 2. And the weapons are kind of a mix of the both as well, with the backpack, the bazooka obviously being from the Amazing Red Warrior. So very cool kit bash. And then I like the color scheme here for this one as well. It's quite nice. So really nice mix of the different parts of the two kits. Here we've got a Master Grade Gym, but a Zeon Converted Gym. So it's got the Mono Eye, it's got the Zaku arm. So it's again kind of more kit bashing going on here. It's like a gym that's been repaired with Zaku 2 parts, basically, I guess, is what's going on. So a captured gym that they repaired, making it into half a Zaku 2. So some more just kind of kit bashing tutorials here, just kind of showing how to modify parts to get everything to fit together. And just, I feel like we can kind of just skip to the finished product here. Just kind of helps to be able to see the end result of that. So pretty interesting build there with the one arm and one leg from the Zaku, and then obviously it's got the Zaku Mono Eye in there as well, and the Zaku bazooka and shield, and a Heat Hawk, and a missile pod there on the leg with just the one single missile. So just got one of those to use, and then I'll be out of luck. And then also, I really like this too, left off the ankle armor. So imagining again, like if it's a captured unit that had been damaged, maybe the ankle armor was damaged, so they just omitted that. It's pretty cool that you can kind of see the backstory of this kind of just all visually. You can imagine at least what this story might be here with this, just based on the model kit, which is all very cool. It's always nice to be able to tell a story with your kit, right? We have another RE100 kit, the Hamma Hamma. Another really cool one. And we've now seen this in use a couple of times. I haven't really mentioned anything more about it, but what that can of compressed air was using a little spray bottle here connected with that. So it's basically a siphon feed system here to be able to spray paint or stuff, whatever it is might be, but paint out of this. So he's got some thinned down metallic paint in there. So for painting like inner frame parts or something like that where it's gray, you want it to be more of like a silver metallic look, you can add some paint in there and then just spraying it on. So rather than having to use an airbrush, since again the theme of this book is without using an airbrush, this is essentially a stand-in for an airbrush, just a siphon feed handheld airbrush kind of system there that you can make just with that particular tool. So you can take your parts from being just like a plain gray to a metallic silver kind of gray. There is basically what that's doing. Adding some water slide decals, and onto that using the paint marker to paint in some of the details here on this, paint markers to paint silver and gold on some of these little detail bits, using Gundam markers here to do some weathering in some of the mechanical areas there as well, chipping with some paint, just with sponge chipping around on some of the armor, and obviously repainted the Hamma Hamma into this white color scheme, which is pretty cool, but nice with the white color scheme, and then the metallic bits pop really nicely, especially the Zeon logo there pops really nicely there on the shield amongst this kind of dirtied and weathered white armor. Those metallic bits pop really nicely on there, so it's pretty cool looking Hamma Hamma there. We got a custom Master Grade Victory Gundam here as the second V by mixing the V- Gundam Verka, V2 Assault Buster Gundam, and Assault Buster expansion parts for Victory Gundam to make the second V-. So pretty cool custom here based on mixing a bunch of parts of the Victory Gundam. It's still going to be missing, unfortunately, the very cool kind of shield system that the second V has, but a really nice mix of different parts, basically making taking a bunch of the parts from the V2 Assault Buster and adding like basically some of those weapons parts here onto the Victory Gundam. Essentially is what's going on with this here, and just some customization along the way, but just to kind of again skip to kind of seeing the finished result just to see how that looks when it all comes together. It's quite cool. I always love the different variations of the Victory Gundam, although the kit, and especially the V2, not really my favorite like kits. And they have their issues kind of internally, but still great looking designs. And this one as well, so it looks really nice. It's a shame that these are the only photos we have, that we didn't have maybe a couple more photos of that, but again, really cool look for that. And I believe this is, yep, our last one here for the book is the Verka, which we saw on the front of the Gundam Verka. And it looks like all the scribing that was done on this is just done with a hobby knife, from what I can tell. So it looks like here it's just kind of how to scribe the panel lines there, just with the knife, like drawing the line, carving it with the knife, and then going over it with a Gundam marker, just to a real touch marker, just to fill in the panel lines. So trying out some different line designs here with that, and then applying that once you've kind of practiced the technique a little bit, applying that onto the actual Gundam. So a bit about like how to plan out panel lines, and there's complete whole other books about the subject of like how to plan and how to execute your panel lines. But here's something really cool. So like after you go over the line, then going over it with a toothpick, just to kind of clean up the line a little bit, just to make it look a little bit more, not like it's just a scratched line in there from a knife. So toothpicks always a very handy tool to have on hand for a lot of things. I use them a lot like for sticker application and things like that as well. I like this customization bit over here as well, cutting off the neck piece, adding a layer of, I think that would be plot plate. Anyway, adding a layer of plastic just to make the neck a little bit taller, so that rather than the head looking straight on, you can then, once the neck is a little bit higher, then you can angle the head down to give it a little bit more meaner look by being able to tilt the head down slightly. And so yeah, this is just going over all of the panel lining, just done with a knife, just on the chest armor there, on the shoulder armor, the leg armor, mixing up some new colors here for this. Some more kind of lighter pastel versions of the typical tricolors there, and then spraying these on. So even though the kit is not fully painted, the colored parts I guess were repainted, and then the white is unpainted, and then there's just obviously some weathering done over the top, which is just some light filtering just on that to get your finished result like we saw on the front. But here's some more photos of the finished product for that. Love the Gundam Verka. Really wish that we'll get a 2.0 of this kit at some point. But until then, that's gonna do it for this Mook, guys. Awesome little one. There's a lot of little things along the way that I talked about a lot of stuff in there, but there was, you know, even more stuff packed in there. So I'll have to go over it again kind of more slowly and do some translating on some of the bits that look of particular interest to me. But yeah, there's some really nice techniques covered in this book. And aside from just that, I think I really like the layout of this book. As I mentioned before, it's a good mix of all the technique stuff and then just some really nice photos of the finished products in here. So definitely a cool Mook here from Hobby Japan. Let me know in the comment section which of the builds was your favorite from this one. I think mine probably would have to be the Doga maybe. I really liked that whitewash Doga. This one I think is probably my favorite one of the book. Very cool application of those armor modeling techniques here onto this one for a really nice end result. But let me know your guys' favorite in the comment section. And if you guys also would like to like and or subscribe, make sure you don't miss future ones, as I've got a ever-growing stack of more Mooks that I want to review and share with you guys. So let me know if you guys like these videos, if you want to see more. This was a great one to do, especially for the weekend. Hopefully you guys have some time to kind of sit down, relax, take a look through this with me during the weekend. And yeah, we got more on the way. So that's it for this video, guys. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.